The way I look at failure is you just keep going. If you quit, that's the failure. That's the point of failure. And sometimes failure is just, as they say, data that you need to accept to go a different direction or to take a different path.
Welcome to The Path to Owning It, a podcast by Provide, powered by Fifth Third. Here, we share real stories and raw lessons from business owners who have lived them. Join us as we spotlight one entrepreneur's journey at a time, from the first spark of an idea to the pivots, challenges, and wins that shape their path. Because entrepreneurship isn't a straight line. It's personal, unpredictable, and full of lessons worth sharing. I'm your host, Corey Brown, a marketing leader at Provide with over a decade of experience supporting small business owners. Whether you're just starting out or deep in the game, this is where you'll hear the unfiltered reality of building something that matters. Like what you hear? Follow The Path to Owning It on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen. Today, I'm joined by Patrick Hadley, an entrepreneur who has reinvented himself more times than most people dare to try once. From publishing a college magazine in New York City, to building one of the country's most recognized experiential marketing agencies, to teaching himself to code from scratch and becoming a prolific user of AI development tools globally, Patrick has never been afraid to close one chapter and start another. That journey ultimately led him to found Momentum Growth Partners, a workflow automation firm that helps commercial lenders and brokers move faster with less friction. I can't wait to get into how he does it. Patrick, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to chat with you today.
Thanks for having me, Corey. Very excited myself to talk to you.
Yeah, awesome. Now, we met last fall, and I just thought your story was so interesting. So for listeners meeting you for the first time, how do you describe what you do today? And how do you even begin to summarize a path that has included multiple businesses, multiple exits, and what sounds like a genuine love for starting over?
Well, let's start with the easy thing. Right now, I build software and AI automation tools for the commercial lending industry, like you said. So that's the easy part where we are right now. I think my path has been exciting for me anyway. Some people might stress them out a little bit, but it doesn't mean it's always been easy. Yeah, but it's always been fun for me. I've gone from being 23 years old and I started a magazine and interviewed Brad Pitt and Madonna. And, we built that up into multiple cities to producing live events for television, Fox, Netflix, ABC, NBC. And I even produced a few movies in between there. That was a little side hustle that I was doing. And now I'm beginning the process of the AI and tech world. So it hasn't always been a straight line, but it's always made sense to me somehow.
Yeah. Now, was there always a version of you that knew you were built for reinvention, or is that something that kind of snuck up on you as you furthered into your career?
I would say if you talk to my parents, probably I've always been curious, maybe a little rebellious here and there, but I've always been optimistic as well. And I've never really thought of anything that couldn't be done. So I usually will, if I see something and I think I can do it, I will probably do it. But I think it started probably when I was young.
Yeah. Do you have any idea where that optimism comes from? It seems like that's something not everybody possesses, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I have actually thought about this and tried to figure it out, but I think it's part genetics, part learned. I don't know where the mix is, but I see life as exciting. And I see that, for me, my business is a very important part of my life. Obviously, my family is as well. But I kind of look at this as an adventure. It's just the way that I was built.
Yeah. And from the beginning, like you said, you started your career in sales and marketing before going out on your own to publish the magazine that you mentioned. I'm not sure many people would have taken that leap. I am just curious what gave you the confidence to bet on yourself that early, and what did that experience teach you about building something out of nothing?
Well, so interestingly enough, there are a couple things that happened. When I was 17 or 18 years old, my father had worked for a major corporation. He was a director. He was an engineer. And after 29 years there was some political stuff and he ended up losing his job, not getting fired, but ended up, forced retirement. That made an impression on me. And I remember thinking that I'm not letting that happen to me. So then I graduated from college. I got a job at a really big medical company. And I was actually the number one salesperson in the country. And my boss made me drive from Connecticut to New Jersey to meet with him to tell me that my daily logs didn't match up with my expense reports, meaning that my daily logs, I said I was in Hartford, Connecticut, and I made a phone call from Bridgeport, Connecticut, or something really silly. I answered the question. I said, well, I did them on an airplane. And I remember thinking, I hate doing this paperwork. And I quit. And I walked out, and 2.5 years after college, I pretty much didn't have a job. So I needed to move to New York City and didn't really know what I was going to do, to tell you the truth. I wish I could tell you this is a big master plan, but it was kind of just that, coupled with my father's experience. Everything kind of flooded my brain and said, all right, this is how this ends. And so we started something. I've always had this idea to write a book, and I only have the title for it. It's called Dumb Enough to Succeed. And I think that part of, I've always thought of myself, I'm not dumb. I don't think I'm dumb, but I think that sometimes you have to turn off your intelligence that overflows, all the reasons why you shouldn't do something, and accept that maybe it's actually a pretty good idea. So I haven't written that book yet, but that's a concept.
Well, I think that's a top 10 bestseller with that title for sure.
Perfect.
And, I just listen to your story. I just think most people don't do these things because they fear failure. And it doesn't seem like you did or do, especially that early in your career. I'm sure you did have what you would consider some fails in there. I guess, how did you handle that when it didn't go your way?
Well, so here's the funny thing about failure. This is also something that I've never really understood or accepted for myself. I've read every business book, everything you can imagine, every leader. And one of the things that I realized is that failure, everybody says this, failure is actually part of the success. I'm working on a project also called Let Them Fail. And the concept of it is, I think we make a mistake when people are young in school. We have A, B, C, D, and F. Right? We don't have E, but we go to F because it's fail. And everybody's so afraid. And I'm not saying you should fail your school, but we teach people to be afraid of failure. And I think that was not my part of it. Now, having said that, when I was in New York, I was 23. My first business was with a friend of mine that we worked together for a couple of years before I bought him out. I was $50,000 in credit card debt, counting pennies literally to get on the subway to go to meetings. And so,
yeah.
I don't know if that was failure at the time, but if I quit, that would have made it permanent, right? So I think that the way I look at failure is you just keep going. If you quit, that's the failure. That's the point of failure. And sometimes failure is just, as they say, data that you need to accept to go a different direction or to take a different path. But I don't really look at failure the same way most people do. And I think that's common for business owners and entrepreneurs. And the Let Them Fail project is actually, it's letthemfail.com. And it's a combination of articles that I'm writing and interviews that I'm doing with business owners. And as a matter of fact, my first guest is one of my very good friends who's a fighter pilot. And I don't want to give it all away, but his call sign was Rudy. And he failed his tests 6 times before passing, and then became one of the top Marine fighter pilots in the Marine Corps. And so I'm excited about my Let Them Fail project because I think that it's for teachers, it's for parents, it's for coaches, it's for businesses, it's for managers. And I think we need to explore the concept of failure and kind of reframe it a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm curious, those early days in New York City, $50,000 in credit card debt, right? Go from that to starting the magazine, it being successful, and then deciding to sell it.
So it took a while. When you start a business, especially when you're young and you really don't have any idea what you're doing, you start and you do everything, or you and your friend or whoever you're starting with, and you end up doing everything. And then you have to, if you're lucky, you can start hiring people. So I think at the beginning, where success came was when I realized that I couldn't do everything myself. I was working a lot of hours, and we would rent the truck, we'd deliver the magazine, and we'd do everything ourselves. And you realize you just can't do that. It's not sustainable. And so I think the big breakthrough was I actually bought the company from my partner and basically started hiring a couple people. And that was a breakthrough. I will tell you, I was not a good manager. When you do everything yourself, you think everybody understands everything. And it was my wife that told me that not everybody cares as much as you do. And it helped. And I think, as I got older, I got better at managing people. She's still better than me, of course, at that. But so I think the success came from when I actually had a good team on board. And then strangely enough, I didn't actually sell the magazine. I ended up selling the URL during the .com boom. So it was kind of a lucky situation. the magazine, we ended up morphing into our events business because our customers, who were mostly like record labels and TV studios and other entertainment-based companies, one of them asked if we could do a college tour. I had no idea what they meant. And of course I said yes. And so that's what started our events business. And we got out of the print business and started doing that. So
That's so funny. Yeah. Props to Katie too. I mean, she's
yes.
awesome, right?
Yeah.
So you eventually built this marketing agency that you are mentioning to, 30 people, became really recognized in the industry. What did that journey from like a scrappy startup to an established business actually look like? And what are some things you had to figure out along the way that really you weren't prepared for, nobody could tell you?
We would be here all day.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is actually, again, just hiring people and then being able to manage and understand what their needs are. That was the hardest thing for me to learn because, again, you just don't know this intuitively if you've never worked. One thing that going backwards a little bit, I only worked for 2.5 years after college in another company. So since I was 23, I had to make things up myself and learn them. And a lot of it was learning as you go. The big thing is you have to be able to put a team together. If you can put a team together of the right people and treat them well and everything else you have to do, help them succeed is really important. As we grew our company, we had employees, but we also had hundreds and hundreds of people that worked with us around the country in different capacities. And so I think at the beginning of business was for me. It was for me to make a living and me to make money. And as you get a little bit into it and you realize you can't do it alone, the biggest learning that I got out of this was that your business isn't just for you. You're building something. You're giving people jobs. You're helping people pay their own bills. And in return, they actually help you. They get dedicated. Most of our employees worked for 6, 7, 8, 9 years with our company. Again, back to my wife who dealt with most of the HR and things like that. She was very good at that. I was learning still. But I do recognize that if you're starting a business, you need to get to a team as soon as you can, because you may have a tendency to do everything yourself. And I think you can't build a business that way. That's just the job. It's different.
Yeah. You've stressed that point a few times. I'm curious if you have any hiring tips or like, are there red flags or green flags, I guess, that you've found that right person or right people that you need to complete your team?
Yes. So I think that one thing that I've learned is it's not always about credentials on paper anyway. And I think that people can write a really nice resume. They can get through now there's AI readers and everything. So you can figure out how to get through that. But I think you have to have a gut feeling, especially in a small business. If you're in a giant company, it's a little different maybe. But in a smaller business, if you have 10 people, 10% of your team could be one hire. And I think you have to have that gut feeling, and they have to have a work ethic that, let me put it this way. We had people in the agency world, you have to work till 10 o'clock at night. And sometimes you just, you start at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and you work till 10 or 11, and you come back and do it again because there's a deadline or whatever else is happening. And I think that takes a special kind of person. I don't know if there's a way to really know, but if the person wants to work 9 to 5 and the company doesn't align with that, that's a big red flag. I also think that I don't actually mind people jumping around company to company, because I think at the end of the day, it's such an important part of people's lives, right? Our work. And so I think that if people can work for a business or a company for a long time, that's a nice marriage, and it's rare. But I think it's okay to move around till you find that right fit. And so I don't look at people, if you've only worked for 1 year at a company or 2 years, I actually think that's better. You make a decision, it wasn't right for you, you move on, and it's better for the business and better for you. But I think as far as hiring, I think it's really important. You have to find people that are better than you at the tasks you're not good at. We had a bookkeeper, like even as simple as that, like that did all of our expenses and things like that, our accountant. That was such an important role that freed me up to go meet with clients and do other things. And I hated doing that stuff. So you know what? The money that I spent on that was paid back 10 times. So I think hire the right person based on your gut feeling, but don't hire them based on how they make you feel, because some people are really good interviewers and they make you feel really good. That's very dangerous. But make sure the fit is right. And then sadly, the reality is hire slowly, fire quickly. And I think when you fire people, I like to think of it as like you're helping them get to a place that's better for them. So it's not just for you. And I think that's an important part of hiring people is that when you make a mistake, be a human, be nice, be kind, but also understand that like, hey, maybe it's better, you have a better fit somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think all of that's great advice. Thank you. You told me one of the questions you get asked most often is, how do you know when it's time to sell? So let's talk about the marketing agency. How did you know?
Well, so when I started that business, the word experiential marketing didn't exist. We would call it guerrilla marketing. But when I started, it was a different industry than when I left. And as I was getting, 10, 12, 15 years into it, it just changed so much. And to be honest, I was starting to get a little bit burned out of it. It was still exciting, but there was a little burnout coming and it was very demanding. It was very demanding. And honestly, I used to go to Fox as an example or in the studios and I would sit with them and we would brainstorm concepts together. And then it turned into just pure RFP business. And so I think the exciting part was to me working with a team and building something. And I think that I realized that was not coming back. And at the same time, we did a lot of technology within our events that we did. I really started liking the technology world. I understood AI was coming, that it wasn't going to be long anyway. And so I had missed, even though I sold my URL during the .com, I kind of missed the .com. I didn't understand what was happening. And so I was not going to miss this one. The good news is I found a buyer. They actually found us. It was all coincidence. The business was running great. We ended up making a deal. It was great. Long-winded answer here, but I think it was a combination of knowing that like I just wasn't getting up in the morning as excited to go to work anymore. And that's a problem for me. That should be a problem for everybody. That's a red flag.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Patrick. Up until this point, we've talked about how you've built not one, but multiple successful businesses, what that journey from early entrepreneur to established business owner really looked like, and how you recognized when it was time to walk away. After the break, I want to get into what came next, the pivot to software, the decision to learn to code from scratch, and what reinvention actually looks like when you're willing to start over on purpose. More with Patrick Hadley right after this. I'm Corey Brown, and this is Provides, the Path to Owning It. We're back with Patrick Hadley. Before the break, we talked about how he built and eventually sold multiple businesses. Now, I want to get into what happened after and what it really looks like to reinvent yourself from the ground up. Patrick, so we mentioned you sold your agency. Now what? Walk us through what was going through your mind regarding your career at this point in your life.
So this was an interesting time. Basically, when you start a business, that becomes your identity and it's really important to you. And you don't even realize how important to you, even though you want to get out of it. So you put everything into the business and then all of a sudden it's gone. And it's weird because you literally wake up one day and there's a different boss. We did events at Comic-Con and our people wore orange lanyards that said Hadley Media. And I went down to Comic-Con, I was excited. I was like, oh, we sold the business. And as soon as I saw my main people wearing the new company's lanyards, I was like, oh, I don't know.
That's
I can't
really
it
tough,
it was actually really hard. And I read about this and there's a thing that entrepreneurs go through a little depression after selling. And of course, nobody's going to cry for anybody. That's not the point, but it's real. And I kind of had to do a little soul searching because I knew generally what I wanted to do. But I think it was then I actually found my purpose in life is actually building things. So it wasn't the money. Although everybody wants money, that's important, but it really was about building something that didn't exist. And so that's when I decided to build a platform for the event business and experiential marketing industries and for agencies.
Patrick, we've had a lot of other guests on the show who has mirrored the comments that you've said about selling a business and what that feels like, right? It's like you think of it sometimes as your baby and you've built this thing from scratch. And even though you've got to let it go or you want to let it go, it just doesn't hit the way you think that it's going to. So I think you're not alone
right.
with those sentiments for sure. So talk about that. Now you're shifting, you've mentioned into software. You've kind of were on the tech side. I know that you tried the traditional route of this, right? Where you were hiring developers, writing specs, and for whatever reason, that just didn't work, right? So I would love for you to talk about that and what that season taught you, and at what point you decided to kind of learn code yourself.
So once you sell your business and you get through your depression, you also feel like you can do anything. So I learned a lot. The most important thing I learned at that time, developers are very expensive. And so you need to build something and you need to build it quickly and launch it. And so I did the basic mistake that most people who get into this, who have a little bit of money to spend, they spend it. And I hired developers. We built this thing. It took about a year to get it right, to develop. And we were all ready to, or a little over a year actually, we were ready to launch. And it was in March. And that was the exact same March that COVID struck. And so it was like the most unbelievable timing, because had I launched it 6 months earlier, we would have had revenue. I would have had the team ready. Everything would have been going. But because I was in the event business where everything has to be perfect, and the software business is nothing like that. And so the most important lesson I learned from the software point of view is that you have to launch quickly, and mistakes, let people find them and fix them as they go. I didn't do that, which is a mistake that everybody I think makes the first time. And so I ended up having to shut it down because the event business was shut down. Nobody was buying anything. Some companies that I was talking to that were ready to be subscribers to what I was building were out of business. They didn't answer their phone. And so I had to make a decision. We were burning through a lot of money every month, and I had to make a decision to ride out COVID or shut it down. And I ended up taking the loss and shutting it down. And that was not fun. I will tell you that. That was not fun for many reasons. So it was a good lesson in life. The thing that I pulled out of it is that I actually really got the coding bug. So I would pay attention to what the guys were doing, but I didn't fully understand it. And I just had enough knowledge that I could start learning. And that's when I basically went into a cave for a couple of years and learned how to code.
I was going to say, was that your quarantine, right? Were you just like learning to code the whole time?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And then while everything was shutting down, I just dug in and learned everything. And of course, AI accelerated that process tremendously. And that's where we are today.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about AI just a little bit. Many small business owners hear about AI, feel like it's either maybe too technical for them, not relevant to what they do. I'm just curious what you'd say to that. And what do you think is possible for the everyday entrepreneur who's willing to kind of lean into these tools?
Well, first of all, I think that everybody has a choice to make on AI, but AI is not stopping, and it's going to touch every single industry and I believe every single job. And that's over a relatively short amount of time, right? I'm not the only one saying that. Everybody says the same thing. I think that it's interesting because I think that some people are making AI the boogeyman. It's like the bad guy, the devil, it's going to take my job. And if you look back on history, there's always been technology. This one is different, no doubt about it. For me, I love the concept of jumping right into that and not being afraid of it. And I think that would be my advice to people, first of all. The other thing I would say is that you don't have to learn, like I learned how to code. You don't have to obviously learn how to code. You don't need to learn anything. And the advantage for small businesses now is that in the past, giant companies would build software and small businesses would have to fit into that software. So whatever platform, pick your platform and you would make your business work within that, but it was never really perfect and it never really worked great. Now with AI, you can actually build software specifically for your business and your workflow, and it can streamline so many different elements of a business. The other thing I'd say to business owners is pick the 5 things you hate doing the most in your business. And I almost guarantee you that we could solve that with AI. It's a lot more than just AI. Everyone has to understand ChatGPT, Claude, all of those are AI, but that's not really. AI accelerates so many things, whether it's booking appointments, you can do that automated. And I also believe that a lot of people may not believe this, but I think that human beings are always going to have a place. The place is going to change, but we're still better than AI at a lot of things. We just have to figure out what those are and let AI do the rest. And so I understand there's fear and everything else, but I also think that the wave is coming at you. You either dive in or run as fast as you can. So you have to make a decision. Standing still you will get bowled over.
Yeah, I mean, you've described this moment to me in our pre-discussions for the show as an inflection point that only comes around once or twice in a generation. I mean, that's a pretty big statement. So I think you've given people a great place of where to start with this discussion. So thank you for that. I want to go back to coding just a little bit. You told me people ask you all the time how you learned this new skill, and I'm using your words, at your age, and whether it's too late for them to do something similar. What do you tell them when they ask you that?
Okay, so there's a few things about this. So the at your age thing is an interesting one because I don't care how old anybody is or how young anybody is. The problem seems to happen at two ends, right? Some people are too young to do something and some people are too old to do something, which I don't buy into that at all. First of all, it's never too late. So I'll go back to my wife. My wife is writing a book called The Rings of Wisdom, and it's basically about intergenerational learning and how different countries and different corporations, some are embracing it and some are not. And it actually taught me a lot and gave me more confidence. Not that I needed it probably, but it gave me more confidence because as you get older, let's say if you're over 40 years old, you have experience, you have wisdom, you have better pattern recognition. And so when you see a problem, your solution based on all of that and other things that are much more technical can come to you faster than when you're 25. And so actually, statistically, it's well known that people over 50 even have a better success rate than people in their 20s for starting businesses. And there's something to that. And so first of all, I'm never going to stop what I'm doing. But I do encourage people my age because going back to AI for a minute, AI is built for people with some experience because you know what questions to ask. Younger people don't really know what questions to ask, which is why I missed the dot-com boom because I didn't have any context of what it was supposed to be.
Sure.
And so I feel like this is the moment for people over 40 to really embrace AI. Everyone should do it, but I think that you could have success at an older age. I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, it's great. I want you to share what you told me too. You once described entrepreneurship to me as being like skydiving. Can you share that with the audience?
Yes. First of all, I encourage everybody to go skydiving once in their life if they can. The interesting thing about it is when you skydive, there's really only a few things on paper that you have to do. So you have to jump out of the plane, then you have to look at your tack and you have to pull your chute and guide yourself down. It seems pretty easy, right? That's all you have to do.
Sure.
Out of those things you have to do, the hardest thing to do is actually jump, right? So you're in a plane and it makes absolutely no sense to jump in reality, but you do it and then you have the exhilarating experience and so on and so forth. So starting a business, I think we all know there are many people that have talked about a business idea or a product idea and they never jump. They just never take the jump. And what happens, in my experience anyway, when you do jump, the earth is coming at you fast and you make the decisions as you go. And so if you can just get through that first part of jumping, you will do what has to be done after that. But you got to get the guts and you just got to jump. It gets easier after that.
It's been on my list. I've not made it there yet, but I will. So I'll take your advice when I do.
Yes.
Sticking with the theme of the show, which is kind of reinvention, for someone that's standing at the edge of their own reinvention right now, what would you want them to hear?
First of all, life is short, as we all say, and everybody says it, and most people don't live it, but they say it. And I'll tell you, my father died of a heart attack suddenly 14 years ago or so. And it's a real thing for me that none of us know how long we have. And so if you're spending time in a job or doing something that you really don't enjoy, and I know that people have to pay their bills and everything like that. So you have to figure this out. It's not as easy as a cliche, but it really is, you have to do it now. Speaking of goofy cliches, yesterday was the best day. Today's the second best day. So nobody gets younger and we get one chance at this. And so if there's something that was like burning in you that you want to do it. And you'll also find that most people will support you and you'll see things opening up all over the place. It's when we stay in our heads and think of all the reasons why it can't be done. Because again, skydiving makes no logical sense, but it's great. Scuba diving makes no logical sense, but it's great. Starting a business for a lot of people makes no logical sense, but it's great. So I encourage people, go do it. If you have to, start doing it while you're still working, so you still have some money coming in. Try to get your first customer to pay for something and just go all in and see things as an adventure. It's just like an adventure that you would take, on vacation or whatever. Again, it takes a little reframing. I wanted to say something else. It's related to this. Since I mentioned my father, my mother is actually 92 years old, right?
Oh, wow.
And she can run circles around most of us still. But to her, a 60-year-old is young. So remember that everything's relative. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're young or old. It doesn't matter because there's always someone older and younger. And you just need to stop thinking about age the way that society wants you to think about it.
Absolutely. And it goes right into kind of my last question. You mentioned 40 as being kind of that pinnacle number. So what would you say to someone who's over 40, maybe successful by every measure, but quietly wondering if their best window has already passed?
I would say it's time to reframe things. That's the reality. So if you're going to live to be 80 years old and you're 40, you have 40 years left, right? You're only halfway there. If you're going to live to be 100, you have 60 years left. And so someone said something to me a long time ago that they were going to go get their master's degree and they were in their mid 20s or late 20s or something. And I said, oh, it seems like it's going to take forever. And they said, I figured that if I'm going to be 34 anyway, I might as well be 34 with my master's degree versus not have it. And I think that I would tell people, if you can look forward 5 years, 10 years, you're going to be there anyway. If you start now and do the hard work that it takes, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, you'll be in a completely different place. And if you plan on turning that age anyway, then you might as well do it doing something that you're passionate about or that you love to do.
Yeah. This reframe is so funny. I remember graduating college. I have a landscape architecture degree that I've never used because I kind of fell out of love with it towards the tail end of school.
Mm-hmm.
But I really remember thinking at that time at 21 that I'm too old to go back to school and do something else. 20 years later, I look at that and think, gosh, that's so ridiculous. I can't believe that was a real thought that I had, right? But it's true. It's exactly what I thought at the time.
I think people do it every day, all day, and for a long time because, again, you're never the right age for something. I also wanted to say one more thing. My 50s have been as good as my 20s, 30s, 40s. And a lot of that is not so much that I can run faster or do certain things better or worse, but it's just how I decide to look at it. Because as you do get older, you actually do have a finite time. You don't know what it is, but you have less time. And so you tend to do things faster because you may be running out of time. That's how I look at it. But I think, again, whether it's my wife's book, the Let Them Fail project or whatever, I think we all need to reframe how we see things. And it starts at the top and all the way down to the bottom. Families, you can't teach this age thing. And there's a lot of people that have so much to offer in the world and they're keeping it to themselves. And I think that's also the big tragedy of all of this. So I would tell everybody, if you have something that you believe, do a little research, but don't do too much research because again, your brain will show you all the reasons to not do it.
Not to, yeah.
Yeah. So you need to kind of sometimes just jump and take the plunge and go for it and rethink failure. There's no failure. Quitting is the only failure as far as that is concerned. So that's my advice.
I think it's great. And Patrick, thank you so much for being here, sharing what it really looks like to bet in yourself, not just once, but over and over again. Your story really is a reminder that reinvention is not a sign that something went wrong. It might just be a sign that you're paying attention. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Path to Owning It. No two journeys look the same, but every one is full of real moments, raw lessons, and stories worth sharing. We hope today's episode gave you something to take with you on your own path. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more listeners find these stories. Know an entrepreneur whose journey we should feature? Let us know in the comments or reach out on social. The Path to Owning It is brought to you by the team at Provide, powered by Fifth Third, where we back small business owners like you. If you're ready to bet on yourself, head to getprovide.com to explore tools, resources, and financing and banking options crafted to help you build your legacy. This show is produced by PodCamp Media, branded podcast production for businesses. That's podcampmedia.com. Producer Dusty Weiss, editor Matt Covarrubias. For Provide, I'm Corey Brown. And to every small business owner out there, your story matters. Keep writing it.